we told you about that visit that took place 2 weeks ago. We had Prince of Wales, Prince Charles and the wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, and prior to that, we had a lot of conversations. Iain Walker is the British High Commissioner to Ghana. She's speaking to Mama Vioso Abuaje now.
For instance, to see you and there's the last minute deal. What is that? What is all this conversation about the final stages of Brexit for the UK?
Well, I think for the last, coming up for 2 years, the UK has been in negotiations with the EU to be leaving the European Union. We leave at the end of March next year, so in about 4 months' time. So I think in truth we're at the sharp end of those discussions, and many debates that have been happening for months are now kind of coming to a head. The meeting this week is a European Council meeting where the Prime Minister will be speaking with other heads of European states, and we hope coming out with some provisional agreement on what the next stages are for our relationship with the EU. In terms of being last minute, I think inevitably it was always going to be a crescendo up until now, and if they do reach a deal, then the next stages it has to be agreed by the UK Parliament, and then European Parliaments have to agree their side of it, and if that's agreed, then we go into planning up until March. But in truth, my view is that even if it's agreed, or if it is agreed, then there will be a transition period for 2 years, potentially more. So I hope, I expect, I trust that one of the outcomes of this will be actually making sure that it's a managed kind of change as the UK leaves the EU. And I should say, whilst the UK is leaving the institution of the EU, the UK remains a very, very, very close partner of Europe, will always be a part of Europe. So this is about a kind of changing political relationship as much as a kind of a separation.
Is that why you're strengthening your ties with some African countries? Prince Charles was here, spent quite a bit of time in Ghana.
He did. I mean, he spent 4 days spread over 5 days. So it was a big tour, and we had the Earl of Wessex here, his brother Prince Edward, for the few days before. So yes, it was a big event. I don't think it's directly linked to Brexit. I think that the UK has always been a global trading nation, an outward-facing country, fifth biggest economy in the world. So many of those things. We take our role in the world seriously, and we want to work with as many of our like-minded partners as we can. So I think that the royal visits, arguably we could do with them a bit more often. It was 40 years since the Prince of Wales was here last, so we'd like to see an acceleration of those visits. But I think, I don't think it was about Brexit. I think it was about saying the UK's role in the world, we have a very firm world view, and we want to work with like-minded countries, and the Commonwealth is a really important part of that. And the Prince of Wales, as the next head of the Commonwealth, sees Ghana as a very close friend, a very close ally in so many of the things that we have in common.
How well do you think we received him as Ghanaians?
I thought very well. I mean, I thought it was a tremendously warm welcome from the President, from the the very many people that their Royal Highness has met, but also just kind of the people that they met in Jamestown and met around and about when they were in Kumasi. I thought the warmth of the welcome was incredibly sincere, incredibly real, and I think that they not only enjoyed their time here, that was obviously part of our hope, but much more than that, I think they've gone away with a very revitalised sense of what Ghana is all about, and a sense of where the future of our interests lie.
Let's go back to some of the places that the Prince and Camilla visited.
Yeah.
So they went to the Prince Charles, for instance, visited the some cocoa farms.
He did, yeah.
What's that like? What's the way forward? So from that, where do we go from there? Essentially, I guess what I'm asking is, how do we pick up from that particular visit?
That's a great question. So I think, to be clear, this visit was not the end in itself. It's the kind of means to an end. It's a kind of a continuation of a relationship, and it's what comes next that matters. The Prince of Wales has long been a strong advocate for the sustainability of cocoa practices. So this wasn't a kind of an opportune chance to go and visit a farm because he was in Ghana. This is because this is something that he cares about deeply. He's spoken about regularly, often, frankly, in the face of lots of criticism. But he's been a very kind of firm believer in, as I said, the sustainability of cocoa. So he went to, as you say, a farm just outside Kumasi, so he could see for real and speak to a farmer for real and speak to those involved in the supply chain for real as to what does it feel like, what are the things that are kind of changing and improving, what are the things that are a challenge, what are the things that feel unfair. And we took that meeting, and actually the next 2 days later, on the Monday, in the Movenpick, we had a round table of CEOs of the cocoa industry. So we had people from Mars, we had people from Nestle, we had people from all sorts of kind of parts of that supply chain talking about how are companies now starting to do more through things like corporate social responsibility, through looking at their supply chains, to make sure that, in the words of the Prince of Wales, that the producer of cocoa is seen to be as important as the consumer. And I think his ability, the Prince of Wales' ability, is in many ways a convener. He brings together people who may not otherwise be together, and he forces a conversation in a way that I think is truly in the kind of interests not just of Ghana, not just the UK, but a very kind of values-driven agenda. And that was, I think, came through in his visit in spades.
One of the things that we said prior to his visit was, how do we take advantage
of the attention that we would get during the period? And I wonder what you think we could do as a follow-up to that cocoa visit, the meeting with the CEOs. What can we do? How do we take advantage of that?
So I think there's a number of practical things that are... So there's a number of direct and a number of indirect things. So I think the direct things are that, you know, we already have, through DFID and others, working with many, many local people, including Cocoa Board and others, real engagement, so investment going into those areas where we are trying to make sure that, for example, good practices that happen in cocoa, they happen in Ghana, they were designed in Ghana, they're not an outside invention, but trying to help kind of share some of those practices to make sure that we're seeing kind of a trebling of some of the crop yields when people are sharing things around how they're pollinating their cocoa plants. They're kind of building greater resilience into their production by kind of producing not just cocoa, but then having plantain and kind of banana trees close by, but then also having timber close by, so that in the quieter periods you have that real kind of sense of sustainability, and when you have rain, it's able to keep the water kind of in the water table and share and make sure that the cocoa trees can grow during the season. So sharing some of those good practices is something that we are doing. But what we're also doing is making sure that we're working with big buyers of cocoa to make sure that conversation is kind of brought together, so that we don't have a conversation with farmers here and a conversation with industry here, that we find a way of bringing those two things together, because the sustainability of cocoa is key to Ghana, and it's key to other markets too. So I think getting us all in the same place is hugely important. So I think there are direct things that we are doing, both in terms of DFID funding, government funding, and also private sector funding that we're trying to bring in. But I think indirectly, we had a very big media presence here, and the images of the Prince at the farm, I think, did go far and wide. And people at the World Cocoa Foundation, who also came as part of this kind of trip, you know, they're able to, I think, to kind of use this in saying that this is not some kind of niche interest. This is not, dare I say, only certain countries. This is a global issue, a global interest. And I think it really is about trying to bring that together, using the convening power, as I said, of the Prince of Wales. So I think there's a number of things to follow.
One of the things we know the Prince of Wales is passionate about is young businesses.
Yeah. And one of the things that he did, obviously, was to look at what some young people in Ghana are doing. What did he take away? Because you were with him the whole time.
I think he just, he's incredibly energetic. And I was genuinely impressed by his resilience and his energy. But he particularly sparked when he met some of those young entrepreneurs. So on the Monday, as you know, he gave a speech at the conference centre, and in on the entrance on the way in there, there were some kind of young entrepreneurs who had been working with the British Council and others, and he was really kind of struck by. There was 3 or 4 very real examples. One was a chap who was producing charcoal from coconut shells, charcoal. There was another person who was using water to kind of waste, basically, to create energy that's being used in agricultural systems. He spoke about them over and over again that day. He brought them up as examples in the follow-up conversations. Since he's been back, since Prince has been back in the UK, and we've heard back from him, His Royal Highness and his team, those are the things that have clearly stuck in his mind. That sense that if you give people, young people, a chance to kind of think about what are the solutions they would like to bring to some of the problems, actually there is incredibly fertile ground there, and it's about kind of releasing that potential much more than imposing solutions. So he's always been an advocate for that kind of approach. But I think hearing and sensing that energy from so many of the young people he met here was really brilliant, actually.
You know, these days I'm mindful
of what to expect from countries such as the UK, because we're saying Ghana beyond aid. And I wonder if you're also restricted in the kind of support that you feel you can give us because of the mantra that we're going around with, Ghana beyond aid.
No, I don't think it's restrictive at all. You know, I think the ambition of Ghana beyond aid, as I've said before, is something that we agree with. Not that it's for us to agree with, but, you know, we agree with it. It seems like a laudable objective. I think there's a number of questions as to how is that going to happen? And I think there is, as the budget I think has shown, last week, there's a lot to do. I think to enable Ghana truly to move beyond aid. But we genuinely hope that Ghana moves beyond aid. I think the question that we need to keep asking ourselves is not what is it coming from, but what is it going to? So what is Ghana going to be once it moves beyond aid? Where are those partnerships? How are those partnerships going to evolve? Because whether we like it or don't like it, we live in a globalised world, and it's about, I think, countries working with like-minded countries to achieve the things that they want to achieve. So what are those partnerships? And I think we saw, again, a bit of that in the Prince of Wales visit, where we were looking at kind of connections between, for example, the British Museum and Osu Castle, as that is being kind of, taken, some of the ideas there have been taken forward. We saw it in the area of plastics, where you're bringing together, UK people who are working on this with Ghanaians who are working on it, because neither of us, frankly, have the answer at the moment. It's pretty obvious that we're all failing on that front. But bringing people who want to work together to make a difference there is important. And just yesterday we announced a £2.5 million investment into antimicrobial resistance, which is about saying that as we see more and more use of antibiotics, their effect is diminishing. It's a serious issue, I think, for global health around the world. We know Ghana cares about it. So Ghana, Thailand and the UK have been leading this. Internationally, we've just put in £2.5 million to invest in the University of Ghana. There's going to be a number of fellowships kind of coming out of that. So for me, what I'm trying to say, I suppose, is as we move beyond aid, I want to try and define what does the future look like. I think it's perhaps less aid, less money in that sense, but more about those partnerships between institutions that are like-minded, and more about bringing in the kind of finance that will perhaps enable further investment in the future.
As we talk about the Prince of Wales, Camilla was obviously with him. And
she also visited quite a number of places. Would you take us back to some of the memorable places and things that she did?
So she, as you said, it was very much a joint trip. So she was with the Prince of Wales for most of the trip. I think highlights for her were certainly the Durbar up in Kumasi. It really was absolutely fantastic. It was it was never chaos, but it often felt chaotic, and I think that's what makes it so brilliant. And just the kind of the excitement, the energy, the colour, the noise, the rhythmic kind of drums, the whole thing is just tremendous. And I think she absolutely was truly struck by that, and the kind of the importance of kind of the rich culture that exists. Because in many ways, it's the kind of thing that we talk about lightly, but I think it matters, that traditions actually really matter. They matter in the UK, they really do. The UK is quite kind of strong on kind of pomp and circumstance. I think in Ghana there's a lot of that too, and it's not, I think it's really important for the future as well, that you keep that kind of, these traditions have a real purpose and a real reason. I think she really enjoyed that. But she made a big focus of hers is on literacy and children's education and empowerment of women. So we did events again at the British Council, Women of the World events, with First Lady, former First Lady, and many women in business and women working in civil society. Really where the ambition of that event is having women share their stories of some of the challenges they've faced, how they've overcome them, and to try and, I think, share that with wider people. She did that, and then a lot on children's literacy at GIS School, which I think, she cares about greatly, and rightly so.
How do we, from where we are...
What's the relationship that we have today, Ghana, UK? The whole idea was to strengthen the ties. Have we been able to do that with this visit?
So I think, I always tend to think that these things are not a moment in time, but individual moments that make a difference. So, have we singularly strengthened the relationship by one visit? I think I'll let others decide that. There were certainly moments in the visit that were quite exceptional. I think that the state banquet was a genuine kind of moment of excitement, fun, vigour. There was a lot of dancing. Yeah, but I think it was the spontaneity of it that really kind of grabbed me. We talk about warmth, but there is a real warmth. There's a real warmth between the President and the Prince of Wales, and so many others. The First Lady and the Duchess also. There's a real warmth, and I think when after the dinner, which was tremendous, and the spontaneous kind of when the President asked the Duchess up to dance, the energy in the room just absolutely went through the roof. And then to follow that with a fashion show, which is, celebrating some of the already very successful Ghanaian designers, such as Christy Brown, such as Oswald Boateng, but also some of the up-and-coming designers, such as Chocolate, and giving these guys a presence. And I thought it was brilliant, because when we talk about the future relationship, fashion isn't just, for example, a fun thing, fun as fashion is. It's actually a really important industry as well. It's where textiles are going to be, hopefully produce more. We're going to be selling more of this stuff around the world, including in the UK. So there's a purpose to it as well as a frivolity. But that was tremendous. But, and it's a really important but, it's all about what comes next. It's always about what comes next. And we're hoping that, for example, the Prince's Trust will be opening an office here in Ghana as a kind of hub for West Africa. Oswald Boateng himself was a beneficiary of that, and so many Edward Enninful, very close to that as well. So I think there will be a number of very real things directly coming through. And as I said, indirectly we've shone a light on things like Marine Drive to a global audience, and I hope that we will now see some of the cogs turning a bit more quickly on some of that than we had before. But the proof of the pudding will be in the eating.
Absolutely. May I ask when the next royal visit would?
Oh crikey! I think we're just recovering from this one, so I don't know yet. But I'll be sure to let you know as soon as we do know. But I think there will no doubt be many more visits coming into Ghana and many more visitors from Ghana into the UK. So I think for me the relationship is in rude health, but we really do need to get moving on a few kind of big areas of policy around investment, around the business environment, so that as Ghana does look to move beyond aid, as the UK moves beyond the EU, that we are in lockstep. And it seems to me there's no reason why we should not be or cannot be, but we need to follow that through with real practical examples.
Just finally, before we wrap up, this may be too soon, but is this visit reflecting in
the number of people who are applying for visas, for instance?
So I don't have the data on who's applying for visas, but in many ways I hope that if there are people applying to go to the UK, we are always open. Visas, I keep saying, I know I don't always get a great response, but visas really are designed to kind of get people into the country, not just stop them going to the country. And we do have well over half, but 60% of our visas are approved, and those that are not are really often to do with late applications and so on and so forth. So we always encourage that. But in many ways, one of the things I'd like to see coming from this trip are more people coming to Ghana. So as the tourist kind of agenda is focused here, we deliberately made this trip present Ghana in quite a different light. So when we did our event on plastics, for example, we took the Royal Highnesses to Sandbox. Quite a funky venue, I think, down on the coast, where you can really see out to sea. Those kind of images now are going out around the world. We've got travel writers that have been following up on the back of it. So we're trying to just make sure that we keep that story going, because if we want more people to come and invest, more people to come and create jobs, the first thing we've got to do is make sure that the perception of Ghana is a positive one, and things like this visit give us a good chance to change the tide, I think, on some of that.
Well, thank you very much.
Some of those pictures out there are amazing, by the way. Sometimes when you look at it, you are in your own country, but you can't believe that these things exist, or the pictures are that great.
Well, I'm sure I shouldn't speak on behalf of the Royal Highnesses, but as I said, I know they had a tremendous time. I think their eyes were opened to so many of the positive things that are happening here in Ghana, and I know they'll want us to now follow through on the things that we said we'd follow through on. So there's much to do.
All right, thank you very much
for your time. Thank you for talking to us, and that's our conversation. Back to you, Roland Walker.
Look, by all standards, that was a great conversation. At least we also get to know more about how we can strengthen the relationship between the two countries. And that was a great visit as well. Having all those interaction, visiting all those areas. And that was a visit to behold, the royal visit to Ghana. But please, let's move on. We have to wrap up with some entertainment. And AM Showbiz is brought to you by Awake Purified Water. After that, we'll have Kadi here to bring us the latest. Stay with us.